Welcome back, my telescopically troubled time servers. I'm your quantum-superposed heretic, simultaneously recanting and advocating across infinite realities. You're tuned into a special bonus episode of the Multiverse Employee Handbook, the only podcast that treats your insubordination to management like a violation of geocentric doctrine. Tomorrow marks 461 years since Galileo Galilei first reported for duty at Universe Incorporated. Though I should note, he was immediately written up by HR for suggesting the Earth wasn't the center of the corporate hierarchy. Our automated response system, ever the pedant, insists we acknowledge that technically Copernicus raised this issue first. But his performance review was conveniently lost in the medieval mail system. Now, gather round the quantum courtroom, my probability amplitude prosecutors, for a tale of what happens when you try to disrupt the ultimate corporate structure, the cosmos itself. Picture, if you will, Pisa 1564. A baby is born who would grow up to become the ultimate cosmic whistleblower, the first person to point a telescope at Jupiter and say, "Hey, those bright dots are definitely not lens flare." Young Galileo, initially destined for a career in medicine, much to his father's delight, took one look at anatomy and decided that the universe itself would make a better subject for his quarterly reports. Like any good disruptor, Galileo wasn't content with just inheriting the company doctrine. While his colleagues were busy writing elaborate theories about why heavier objects must fall faster, based entirely on reading the ancient employee handbook without ever actually dropping anything, Galileo had the audacity to suggest they try a little thing called experimental evidence. It was like suggesting the board of directors should actually use the product before making decisions. Revolutionary and slightly terrifying.
Oh, yes!
His big break came when he heard about a new Dutch invention, the telescope. Being a true innovator and possibly understanding the concept of patent law better than his contemporaries, Galileo immediately optimized the design and started his own celestial observation startup. He was the first to point it at Jupiter, discovering 4 moons that would later be known as the Galilean satellites, though I suspect he just called them direct reports. But it was his support of the Copernican model that really got him in trouble with upper management. Suggesting that Earth wasn't the center of the universe was like telling Medieval Inc. that their entire organizational chart needed restructuring. The Church, playing the role of the ultimate corporate compliance department, was not amused. In 1633, Galileo found himself facing the 17th century equivalent of a disciplinary hearing. The Inquisition, making modern HR departments look positively casual, strongly suggested he reconsider his position on heliocentrism.
No.
Galileo, demonstrating the kind of survival instinct that would later become standard in corporate culture, publicly recanted.
Okay.
Though legend has it that after signing his recantation, he muttered, "And yet it moves." The Renaissance equivalent of sending a passive-aggressive email after a particularly frustrating meeting. And that, dear listeners, brings us to how his revolutionary approach to scientific method would shape not just our understanding of the universe, but also how we justify our expense reports. Now, let's explore why Galileo's insights are more relevant to our daily corporate existence than that mandatory training video about proper photocopier usage. While most people know him as that guy who got in trouble for saying Earth moves, his real contribution was something far more revolutionary: the idea that the universe speaks mathematics. Picture, if you will, A world where every natural phenomenon was explained through elaborate metaphors and philosophical arguments. It was like being stuck in an endless marketing meeting where no one's allowed to look at the actual sales data. Galileo had the audacity to suggest that maybe, just maybe, we should measure things instead of just arguing about them. His approach was deceptively simple. Observe, measure, theorize, test. It's like the scientific version of turn it off and on again, but with more falling objects and slightly fewer printer jams. He showed that heavy and light objects fall at the same rate minus air resistance, which was particularly embarrassing for all of those philosophers who'd spent centuries arguing otherwise without ever actually dropping anything. But perhaps his most enduring legacy is the concept that scientific theories must be testable. It's not enough to have a beautiful theory. It needs to make predictions that can be verified through observation. Imagine if we applied this principle to corporate mission statements. Though I suspect synergized cross-platform engagement metrics might not survive first contact with actual measurement. His work on inertia and motion laid the foundation for Newton's laws, though our automated response system insists that if Galileo had access to quantum mechanics, he would have immediately started investigating why the office printer only works when directly observed. His improvements to the telescope revolutionized astronomy, though it's worth noting he never managed to observe why some colleagues consistently miss obvious meeting calendar invites. Even his famous clash with the church accidentally established an important principle: the separation of scientific and religious authority. It's like when IT finally admits they can't actually fix the coffee machine and calls in facilities. Sometimes different departments need different jurisdictions. Today, Galileo's legacy lives on in every aspect of modern science. Every time we collect data instead of relying on authority, every time we test a hypothesis instead of accepting conventional wisdom, we're following in his footsteps. Though I suspect even he would be puzzled by why we need 27 levels of management to approve a simple experimental protocol. And so, dear listeners, as we celebrate Galileo's 461st birthday, remember, in the vast corporate cosmos of existence, every revolutionary idea is simultaneously heretical and obvious until someone actually measures it. And as he himself might have said, had he worked in modern corporate culture, and yet it needs another review meeting. This is your quantum coherent correspondent, reminding you that somewhere in the multiverse, there's a reality where Galileo became a middle manager instead of a scientist. Though I suspect even there, he's still dropping things off the Leaning Tower of Pisa. He just calls it vertical process optimization testing. And remember, if you need technical support with this episode, our help desk exists in all possible universes between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. local time. Though given Galileo's influence on our understanding of time dilation, those hours might be more relative than your HR department would prefer.